9/11, the day that changed America. Here now, David Muir.
Good evening. On the eve of one of the darkest days in American history. Tomorrow marks 20 years since 9/11. Tonight here, Americans who lost loved ones, the survivors who got out, the first responders who answered the call, their bravery, their heroism, and tonight, their wish. So many telling us they hope this country will pause to remember the pain of that day and the humanity that followed. One survivor telling me she has carried the burden that she survived when others did not, only to realize she's here for a reason, to tell the story to the next generation. Tonight, what they lived through and their hope that Americans will again come together.
The morning of 9/11, it was warm, clear skies, it was a beautiful fall. It was a clear, beautiful morning.
Yeah, it was. I would walk past the fire department until I could say hi to the firemen that I would see all the time.
You were making breakfast for the girls in the kitchen.
I was. We had gotten up early. It was Anna Claire's first day of preschool.
I'm Diane Sawyer, and it's Tuesday, September 11th, 2001.
I turned on the television to watch the news.
We've got 60 degrees at Dulles Airport, 66 at Reagan National.
This was your second day on the job?
My second day on the job, yes. Reporting to the Pentagon for work. Started out like a regular day.
Come on, Stretch. Come on.
The president was in Florida.
And that morning on 9/11, he was up early to go running. The president had traveled there to do an education event.
How far did you go altogether?
4.5.
A perfect day in America. It was a glorious day. And the world changed.
A ticket agent in Portland, Maine.
I was working the first class counter. There was a couple of guys that were in a big hurry. One shorter guy, his name was Muhammad Atta. He seemed to be in awful bad mood. So I just said, well, if you don't get up quickly, you're going to miss your flight altogether. And he gave me a sneer, and they both turned around and left.
They would fly from Portland, Maine to Boston's Logan Airport. They would then board American Airlines Flight 11. And 15 minutes after takeoff, the hijackers were forcing their way into the cockpit.
Nobody injure yourself on the airplane. Just stay quiet.
I had just asked American 11, is that you? American 11, do you hear me? I was the first person to realize that a hijacking was taking place within our country.
A total of 19 hijackers soon in the air on 4 airplanes, and Flight 11 would soon be headed to the Twin Towers.
My name is Stanley Premden. I worked at the World Trade Center on the 81st floor.
The 77th floor.
I was on the 90th floor. This feeling in you like I'm on top of the world.
There was over 100 stories tall.
About 50,000, maybe more, people worked at the World Trade Center.
We were told that this building was so massive that it was built to withstand 5 helicopters crashing simultaneously into it without taking it down.
We lost radar on him, but that was 5 minutes ago. He was 8 miles east of JFK.
American 11 was flying evidently down the Hudson River. It was going at very high speed.
We saw a plane right behind the Empire State Building heading right towards us.
Battalion Chief Joe Pfeiffer out on another call, about to hear that plane overhead. 8:46 a.m.
The plane hit almost directly above me, 3 floors up on 93, ripping through the building, followed by the exploding gasoline.
This is at the World Trade Center, and there has been some sort of explosion. We don't fully know the details. There is one report that a plane has hit World Trade Center.
There's no way it was a small plane. Just the hole that I could see in the building was way too big for that.
There is that thick black smoke now emanating from the building. Debris falling to the street below.
Florence Jones was in the South Tower when the North Tower was hit.
I just sat down at my desk on the 77th floor, and when you heard that loud bang, the whole building shook. This pervasive smell of gasoline. I called my mother, and I said, go to the TV and tell me what they're saying hit the building. So at that point, she said, get out of the building.
What did you see?
I was just looking at all the papers and people hanging out of the windows and trying to figure out. Then it really hit me why these people were hanging out of the building. And I was like, oh God.
We have fire on several floors, visible flames from inside the building. So every medical ambulance you got, 12 Bravos responded to the World Trade Center.
As we're going across Canal Street, I'm thinking to myself, geez, I wonder how many people need our help right now.
The plane severely damaged all 3 stairwells of the North Tower. There would be no escape for the people trapped on the top 19 floors, and New York City firefighters were now racing into that building.
Last thing I told them was, they're trying to kill us, boys. Let's go.
17 minutes after Flight 11 hits the North Tower, workers in the South Tower see something.
All I could see was this dark shadow. I was like, what the heck is that? It was huge.
The plane is coming towards me like this. And as the plane got to the closest 1,500, 1,000 yards away, the plane starts to tilt.
9:03 a.m.
Oh my God! The next building is just blew up! Oh my God! I don't believe it!
That looks like a second plane that was obviously designed to attack the World Trade Center.
And that big orange glow that you see there, I'm in the middle of that big orange flame.
Everything rained down on us.
Every desk is mangled. The only desk that stood firm is the one I'm under. My Bible is on top of that desk.
Florence Jones had just been on the 78th floor telling colleagues they needed to get out. She had just come back down to 77. The plane hit 1 floor above.
Yeah. And I realized if I had stayed up there, I would have been dead. What caught my attention was the fact that people that I knew were 100 plus stories up were hanging outside of the window. And I watched them. They were making a sign of the cross, holding hands, and jumping. To me, those people were heroes.
We saw what we thought was debris, and
They knew they were going to die, but they didn't want to die in that building. There just was no way other than to jump.
You have talked about the respect you thought was owed to them in that moment.
Many people have said I couldn't watch that, and I said, you really kind of owed it to them to watch that, because they made the ultimate sacrifice.
And that bearing witness to what they were doing.
Yep.
That it was someone acknowledging the pain that they were going through.
Yes. I give them a lot of credit for doing what they did.
The president in Florida is about to learn the second tower has been hit.
Yes, mate, give yourselves a pat on the back.
Yeah. I leaned down and I whispered into his right ear, a second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack.
then the real shock, the look on the president's face. I had never seen that look of gravity and concern.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
And that airline ticket agent already asking himself, was there anything I could have done?
Somebody said, Tui, didn't you check in a couple of guys on that flight? I says, yes, I did. And I just... I lost it. And I'm thinking, you stop, what did I miss?
The hijackings occurred right when the fasten seatbelt sign goes off. They bought certain seats in first class. They would go in the cockpit, kill the pilot and the co-pilot, and then seal off the rest of the plane. And then they would turn off the transponder, which would make the plane essentially disappear into radar clutter.
Okay, let me tell you this. We're looking, we're also lost American 77, and they don't have any idea where he is or what happened.
The third aircraft that was missing was American 77.
Hey, this is Dulles Approach Control. We're tracking a fast-moving primary heading towards the White House. The White House has been advised.
I looked up, and that is when I see the airplane that will crash into the Pentagon. It's crossing the freeway. It's knocking the light poles down, so I would say it was no more than 25 feet off the ground. It went right through the first floor windows of the Pentagon. It just disintegrated.
We go for 06. It looks like that aircraft crashed into the Pentagon, sir.
When you hear that the Pentagon's been struck on 9/11, there are 25,000 people that work there.
That whistling sound from an airplane engine, the fireball that passed right to the right of me as I'm still sitting in my cubicle.
It was Sheila Moody's second day on the job.
I could hear people for a few seconds, and then there was just a strange, eerie quiet. I got up and shook the embers off my hands. My back was burning. I was like, Jesus, I don't believe you brought me here for me to die like this.
Chris Brayman, working in the Pentagon too.
It was so dark you barely could see, and it was just so incredibly hot.
I hear a fire extinguisher, and then I hear a voice of somebody yelling, is there anybody in here?
Each of us would take turns, yelling, come to our voice. We could hear the screams.
And I said, we're here. He says, I can't see you. I said, I can't see you either. I says, but we're here. We're in here. So I started clapping my hands, and I was clapping my hands together as hard as I could.
So he could hear you?
So that they could hear us. I turned and I looked, and I could see some movement through the smoke. As I reached through the smoke, there was a hand on the other side.
And that voice, that hand that reached out to you in that smoke.
That was my rescuer that day.
20 years later, back together in this room. Do you remember that day reaching into that cloud of smoke for her hands?
I just remember looking over, and then grabbing her and then running her as fast as we could to where the medics were.
Sheila's hands covered in burns, and she has never forgotten what she heard on the radio.
You could hear the communications that were going on coming across the radio, and then you hear there's another plane coming.
There's an aircraft coming.
Everybody back! Everybody back! The plane is out!
There are possibly 1 or 2 more planes that have been hijacked.
The entire area has been evacuated, and this is a disaster.
We would see just hundreds of people going down the streets, trying to get away from D.C.
The president was raced to the motorcade, and it began a 9-hour odyssey. The president didn't know where he could go to be safe.
Fairly early on, the name Bin Laden started to be mentioned on our air.
Already we have someone in the Intelligence Committee pointing the finger at Osama bin Laden.
The CIA very early that morning had identified the names of the hijackers because they had been tracking Al-Qaeda. And they had photographs of people getting on the airplane.
Right there on the manifest, they saw names they recognized. Bin Laden.
The president says, where are we going? And I said to Barksdale Air Force Base. He says, no, we're going back to Washington, D.C. I said, Mr. President, you don't want to make that decision right now.
Air Force One had been in the air and out of sight for almost 2 hours. And at some point, we felt the aircraft go even higher, much higher than it had been before.
The president was on the phone with Dick Cheney.
Cheney said to him, "Just got a report that says Angel is next." Angel was the code word for Air Force One. That sent a shiver down everybody's spine. Who's got the code word for Air Force One?
There is chaos in New York at the moment. Both trade towers now, these 110-story high towers, have now been hit.
Visible flames from the side of the building. Confirmed, we have fire on the upper floors of the World Trade Center.
Chief Joe Pfeiffer, the first to arrive, now coordinating the rescue effort inside the lobby of the North Tower.
The pilots of the police helicopters realized they couldn't land on the roof because of the smoke. So what that left us to do was to climb the narrow stairs and to evacuate everybody from the building.
He would send firefighters up, including his own brother, Lieutenant Kevin Pfeiffer, and Brian Clark on the 84th floor, now coming down.
We got to the 81st floor landing. I heard this muffled cry inside the 81st floor. "Help, help, I'm buried. Is anyone there? I can't breathe."
I'm trying to get up. I'm pushing the debris, and I made a fist as tightly as I could, and my fist passed through that wall, and the man grabbed my fist, and he pulled with such force.
He landed on top of me.
And this good man put his hand around my shoulder and he says, "Come on, buddy, let's go home." We had 80 floors to go.
Now you know you have to get out.
Yes, we started running. We got into the stairwell. There was so much smoke, we all had to kind of like hold hands, hold on to somebody's shirt in front of us so that we could see where we were going. And I was like, we need to keep going. We have to keep going.
They see the firefighters going up.
And they asked us where we came from, and we said 77. And they were like, Jesus. I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I wouldn't go up there.
On the 83rd floor of the North Tower, Fred Eichler and Jonathan Judd trapped, the fire just outside the door.
I saw the flashlight of the firemen.
The glass door was a godsend because it allowed them to see us.
And as soon as I saw the flashlight, I ran to the door. I really think...
In the stairwells, trying to get out, Florence and the offer from her boss.
I had the shoes on, and I was really starting to shake, and I just couldn't control it. And he said, "Florence, take your shoes off, because otherwise you're gonna fall." So I gave him my shoes, I gave him my handbag, and the other gentleman, he stayed next to me and held my hand all the way down.
Of the last 25 people out of that tower, you were number 18.
I knew we were amongst the last people to come out of there. I just feel I'm very fortunate to have made it out.
Air traffic controllers still trying to track down every plane.
I ordered all aircraft in the air to land at the nearest airport.
Command Center has implemented a nationwide ground stop for all arrivals and departures.
And praying that there wasn't going to be another one. Of course, there was another one, United 93.
They hear sounds of a struggle from Flight 93.
Negative contact, we're looking at United 93.
As the morning continued,
both towers have been hit by planes now in the last half hour.
I began to think about where Tom may be.
On board Flight 93, the hijackers with a message for the passengers.
They got the piece down. Keep remaining steady. We have them all aboard.
You were actually on the phone with his mother when he clicks in, and he says to you,
I'm on United Airlines Flight 93, Newark to San Francisco, and the airplane has been hijacked. The hijackers were trying to get into the cockpit, and they had already knifed a guy. And he told me to call the authorities, and he hung up.
At what point do you tell him what you're watching play out on that kitchen TV?
While I was talking to the FBI, Tom called a second time. And at that point, I told him that there were other hijackers, there were other planes. He wanted to know who the hijackers were, what did they want.
United 93 just reported that they heard screaming on the frequency and the people have a bomb on board.
And the moment you tell him that you've now watched two planes go into the World Trade Center,
He immediately knew that it was a suicide mission.
Other passengers start calling their families too. Lauren Grancolis was 3 months pregnant.
It was, Jack, pick up, sweetie, okay, there's a little problem on the plane.
Flight attendant Sandy Bradshaw calling her husband Phil.
She was telling me how her flight to throw on him.
He said that he was putting a plan together to take back the airplane, that there was a group of them. He told me they were waiting until they were over a rural area. I just remember being an old flight attendant. That training kind of kicked in, and I just said, you need to sit down, be still, be quiet, and not draw attention to yourself.
And when you told him, as a previous flight attendant yourself, to stay in your seat and not draw attention to yourself, did you suspect, even in saying that wasn't going to work?
I knew as the words were coming out of my mouth that it was the wrong thing to say, because he yelled back into the phone. He said, no. If they're going to drive this plane into a building, we're going to do something.
They had a plan.
Had a plan.
If American jet fighters were to encounter another hijacked airliner, would they shoot down a civilian-loaded airliner?
That was a conversation that took place, the decision was made, and the president gave the authorization to shoot down civilian aircraft.
Lives in the air to save lives on the ground. That is a stunning development.
We had learned that the White House was being evacuated. We learned that the entire airspace had been shut down. We also learned that Flight 93 was still airborne.
United 93, United 903, do you hear Cleveland?
Tom called a third time, and it was really in that phone call that I realized that there was nothing I could do or say. He was going to go after the hijackers.
They were defending their country.
I think they were defending everything that's good about humanity.
In those final moments, loved ones on Flight 93 calling home.
She finished her message with, I love you, please tell my family I love them too.
She told me to raise the kids right, and I told her that I wanted to do it with her and that she needed to come home. And then we got to talking, about how much we loved each other. And she said, Phil, everyone's running to first class. I've got to go. Bye.
Flight attendant Cece Lyles leaves a message for her husband, Lauren.
Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, Dave. I don't know what to say. There's 3 guys. They've hijacked the plane. I'm trying to be calm. We're turned around, and I've heard that they're going to see your face again, baby. I love you. Bye.
When you heard the cockpit recorder,
Tom's voice yelling in the cockpit, as if he was leading the charge.
with those fellow passengers storming the cockpit.
It's like a movie. It just never changes. Wondering, what were his last thoughts? What was the last thing he saw? Did he see the ground? Did he feel anything? You just remember little things. The sound of the engine coming through the phone. The feeling of wanting to help him and knowing that I couldn't.
10:03 a.m., United Flight 93 crashes outside Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Do you see any activity on your right side, smoke or anything like that?
We do have a smoke puff now at about, probably 2 o'clock. It appears to be just a dark cloud, like a puff of black smoke.
The engines had gone down through the woods.
Shanksville Volunteer Fire Chief Terry Schaefer.
There were so many small pieces, broken up with the size of your fist or less. It was just unbelievable.
The policeman who was assigned to my home came to me and said, "I think that was your husband's plane." And I just remember my knees buckling I just fell.
20 years later, you remember that?
I remember it so well. The emotion of it. I said everything I needed to say.
Which was?
I love you.
We had a crash near Pittsburgh here today.
I remember the vice president calling the Pentagon and saying, "Did you shoot down an airliner?" And they kept saying, "We can't confirm." And he kept saying, "You must know if you shot down a civilian airliner." But of course, it was the plane that had gone into that field in Pennsylvania because those very brave passengers were determined not to let it attack again.
That morning, things were happening very quickly. Only 56 minutes between the impact of the South Tower and the collapse.
Stanley and I, we got on the west side of Trinity Church, and all you could see was the South Tower.
And as we stood there,
I said, "There's no way, that's a steel structure." And I didn't even finish that sentence.
A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
I was standing in the North Tower. At 9:59, I heard a loud rumbling sound. And I had about 1 second, maybe 2 at the tops, to make a decision what to do. It moved and pushed some people in front of me to a little alcove off the lobby. Then the lobby goes completely black, where I can't see the hand in front of my face.
It's gone! The whole tower! It's gone! Holy crap!
There were gasps and screams that I could hear from the street.
The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. The entire building has just collapsed. It folded down on itself, and it is not there anymore. The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
We're talking about massive casualties here at the moment, and we have...
The South Tower has collapsed. 29 minutes later, 10:28 a.m.
The North Tower.
Still inside the North Tower, Captain Jay Jonas can feel the building sway.
And I got a couple feet away from the stairway door, and it starts. The collapse of the North Tower with us still inside.
Fire Chief Rich Picciotto on the 6th floor.
And then all of a sudden there's no stairs, and I'm just free falling in blackness. So my thoughts were, please God, make it quick, because it's going to be over in a split second. And all of a sudden,
suffocating the city for blocks.
Everybody get out! We had a collapse of the second tower! Urgent, urgent!
Let's get in here! Get away from the fire! Oh my God! Get behind! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! You're right! Oh my God, you saved my life! I'm just tired.
thousands of tons of debris on top of us. This is a crypt. We're never getting out.
There were beepings everywhere. Later, I found out that first responders carry locators, and they were going off everywhere.
Somewhere in that debris, Captain Jay Jonas and his team, when suddenly they see a piece of the sky.
And all of a sudden, a ray of sunshine hit the stairway. And I looked up and I could see like a little sliver of blue sky. I said to the guys, I said, guys, there used to be 106 floors over our heads. Now I see sunshine. So I think we're on top of the World Trade Center.
16 people would survive on a small part of the stairwell, still standing.
I just shake my head. I says, I can't believe I'm here.
We lost a lot of people. We lost 343 firemen that day.
23 New York City police officers were killed, and 37 Port Authority police officers were killed.
What brought these two skyscrapers to crash to the ground? It was the fuel that started fires on multiple floors and started to weaken the steel columns. It pulled the outside of the building in and caused the progressive collapse.
Both trade towers have now been attacked and destroyed. So if you're a parent, you got a kid in some other part of the country, call them up.
Inside the cabin of Air Force One, there's a television, and the president is watching, and we watched the towers collapse. Just helplessness, because all we can do is watch. The president was alone, just standing there in silence, just staring at that picture of the collapsed towers.
The president returns to Washington.
He's leaning over on the left side of the plane. You can see the fighter jets, and out of the right side of the plane, you can see the plume of smoke still rising from the Pentagon.
And that's the face of war in the 21st century. Terrorists against a superpower.
Today our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
I just remember it began what I called the hard heaviness. We were a nation at war, and we were preparing a counterattack.
Do you see your husband and your girls every day?
I do see Tom in each of the girls. Hallie has his drive and determination. Anna Claire has his wit. Madison has his practicality. They are their father's legacy. And they are my joy.
And this is my great niece, Adriana John. She's named after her grandfather.
And a new grandbaby 21 days ago.
Yes, another blessing.
Do you think about all the milestones missed by the people who share that office?
You think about every graduation, weddings, babies, and the impact of one life being taken leaves a hole in the lives of so many people.
I ask myself many, many times, Lord, why me? Of all these good men and women, why me?
Lawrence asks question 2. We have followed her for nearly 20 years, and we will never forget seeing those reflecting pools for the first time.
Wow.
The names of the fallen etched in bronze, and Florence's friend, Jill Orr Campbell.
I always remember Jill's smile. I try never to think about the way she died. As a company, we were very, very close. We all knew Jill.
And now, 20 years later, a phone call from Jill's son.
Oh, I was so happy to talk to him. The first things out of his mouth was, "Can you tell me something about my mom?" And I said, "You know what? And I said, your mom was she's a good person. She worked really hard, but her biggest pride and joy was being your mom. And I said she'd be very proud of you.
It's hard to imagine a child who never knew his mom calling you up nearly 20 years later and saying, can you please tell me something about my mom?
This young mother didn't get to do the job she wanted to do the most. And I thought it was ironic because I don't have children. I was like, if I could change places with your mom, I would have.
Hey, Jake. Hi. And this is Jake, Jill's son. He was just a baby on 9/11. He's now 20, and he says Florence has given him a gift.
It was incredible for me to hear just her smile. I don't know if it's because Florence was the last person to see her and the bond that they had. Just hearing that from her and just getting this kind of confirmation that the ability to make people smile is something that I've missed, but it's good to know that that's who she was, and I have a little bit of her in me.
Do you ask yourself, why me? Why did I survive?
You're not prepared for the weight that is put on you after this. You have to get past that and realize that you're here for a reason, only if it's to tell the story, to tell it to the next generations of what happened. So I have learned to handle the burden. It's not easy.
And Dina Bailey, who says there were so many heroes that day.
It's not just Tom's story. It is the story of every person on that flight coming together and serving the same purpose. And I think that that is the strength that we draw from that story of Flight 93.
20 years later.
20 years later, 50 years later.
As a country marks 20 years, what is your hope?
I'd hope that people realize if you weren't around when 9/11 happened, you need to understand we as a country came together. It wasn't about blue or red. It was about humanity, and we all cared. I just feel we are tearing each other apart again. It really could. And then what are we going to do?
You have to stand up and say, let's do this. We can do this. We're going to do this. You can't wait for someone else to take that lead. Take it yourself.
Remember their sacrifice.
Remember. Remember.
Their remarkable strength, their courage, so many who bravely shared their stories with us, and of course their hope that America remembers and that we come together. And now Diane Sawyer here with one extraordinary hour of hope through the eyes of the children who never knew their fathers and the resilient mothers who raised them.
All that filming, and I saw her there, and I was just compelled to go over to her. And then I found out that she was having issues just walking around New York.
Barahin Ashrafi, a Muslim woman, widow, a new mom, and after 9/11, someone being taunted when she walked down the street.
People don't understand what I have inside. I'm the victim also.
There were two women from very different worlds.
James, take this ring.
Take this ring.
As a sign.
As a sign.
Carolyn had just celebrated her one-year anniversary with her husband Jim, who was a bond broker at Cantor Fitzgerald. Barahin had a wedding arranged by her parents in Bangladesh. Her husband was a physicist who decided to come to the U.S. for opportunity, even though the work he could find was as a banquet waiter. Windows on the World.
Go right inside.
We were there when Baraheen had to learn how to do something always done by her husband. She took driving lessons.
I'm trying to not to feel nervous, but if you open my mind, you'll see I'm feeling little bit nervous.
Did fine. This is going to be a temporary license.
Thank you
Valid.
very much.
You're welcome. Valid for 3 months. They'll send the permanent license to your home automatically. That takes about 3 weeks. So it's not necessary to go into motor vehicles. Okay? All right? I'm going to need your signature.
2 days after the attack, and as we saw her through the years, we noticed how she gave him strength from his dad.
You're happy. I know. He's seeing you, and he is so proud of you, and you'll make him proud.
And someone else noticed too. Carolyn, cradling her infant Jack. She asked Baraheen for help.
I said to her, wow, what do you say to your children when they ask where their dad is? And she looked at me with these gorgeous big brown eyes that were filled with tears. And she was so beautiful. And she said, I tell them to close their eyes and look inside their heart. And I've never forgotten it. I came up with a little kind of thing that we did together. You know, where does Daddy Jim live? And he would say, in heaven. And who does he live with? The angels. And when you want to talk to Daddy Jim, you close your eyes and look inside, and he would say, my heart.
Mona!
Where does your dada live?
Heaven.
Heaven. And who does he live with?
God.
And who else? The angels. And when you want to talk to Daddy, you close your eyes and look inside the where? And where's your heart? Oh, yes, that's nice, love. Daddy loves you.
Baby Jack is now 19 years old and grateful for the mother who tried so hard to help him keep his dad close.
I just appreciate everything she's done because she's like the strongest person I've ever met. Yeah. Really appreciate her.
Thanks, buddy. I love you, buddy.
In their backyard, there is a tree. It is surrounded by stones which say, close your eyes, look inside your heart. And if you're wondering, where is Baraheen tonight? Well, she's been carpooling kids over all these years. Her daughter is now in law school. Her baby boy now in college. They all sent love to the gathering and gratitude to this country, but ask tonight to remember this day in private. On September 11th, so many of us remember a nation pulling together to prove that fear and hatred had not won.
Everywhere you turned, you saw an American flag. Driving down the streets, it was just like a tunnel of American flags.
Just as us, hundreds of strangers sent what they could.
Stuffed animals for the kids and books, and just like, they didn't even know us. Macadamia nuts from Hawaii, teddy bears from everywhere.
I had one woman who gave me like $1.50, and she said that this is all that she can give, and she's a waitress, and she will send me more money when she can.
David Kasimis was a baby when he received a quilt, and he wished the women at a place called Joann's Fabrics knew that he slept under their quilt for years.
It's something that I could hold on to at night, you know. People from Joann's Fabrics in Pennsylvania were supporting me, and they never know where that quilt went.
Bye, David.
So we tracked down some of those kind strangers from Pennsylvania who made a blanket that consoled a little boy.
I'm just so thankful that he's cherished it and it gave him comfort over the years.
I hope that you will hold it in your heart forever.
And another connection, remember Jillian Suarez, now a police officer. Her father was the policeman who rescued 2 women from the tower.
This
This is my actual first time coming down here since 9/11.
Jillian is there with Crystal Tyson on this first time back. Tyson was suffering from smoke when Jillian's father found her.
In this picture, I'm gasping for my breath. And he's trying to make sure that I get to the ambulance. And then after he put me in, he didn't come back.
And throughout the day, other moms told us about other small miracles along the way. Holly O'Neill Melville remembered being brave enough to sing to her laughing husband at her wedding.
It was crazy scary for me, but I sang Dream a Little Dream. You know, we got married, and 3 months later he was killed.
She's a social worker, but says about 10 years ago, she realized she had never reclaimed the spirit of that girl.
The trauma of that sort of ripped away a lot of my self-confidence and my identity.
Her daughter Sean, a singer and songwriter, had an idea. Her mom should find a local band and take a chance again.
Oh my gosh, look at you. And you're singing as a kid.
And as the sun begins to set on our gathering, we have an idea. A blank canvas. We ask the kids to use it to send a kind of message to the world. This generation of kids who have lived through so much trauma, school shootings, financial collapse, and now COVID, carrying inside them a kind of strength from the day the nation stood still.
I have the tools to recognize okay, I'm losing something and then this is how I'm going to deal with it.
It goes back to the whole 9/11 thing. You have to cherish the time you have with people because things can change in an instant.
You got rollers, you got brush.
They pick up their brushes. Denny Soulis reminds us it was such a sunny day 20 years ago.
When people describe the sky on that day, on September 11th, everyone has their own version of what blue it was. North Tower?
Yeah, my dad was in the first tower was the North one, 92nd floor.
Really?
Yeah. How about your dad?
I want to say 101st. For some reason I always have two numbers in my head. 101, 103. But I don't know, I try not to focus on the little details like that.
Got tools, you can find other ways to use them.
They're guided by two artists who exhibit their paintings near the 9/11 memorial. They're known as Boogie and Rez.
Getting people out of their head and telling them that this is about what you want people to feel when they walk in.
And people don't have to understand it literally to understand.
Don't think, just put your feelings out there. That's it.
On the mural, inside an equation, a kind of trick of the eye.
So if you stand back and you take your hand and you put it over the top of the top half and still to the bottom half says I love you. Yeah. So that's really cool.
The lyrics to Dad's favorite song.
Hey Jude, don't be afraid.
Angel's Wings. And Grace Danahy writes something for that high-octane dad, now watching over her. And as they work, these kids tell us they just hope this nation can honor all those lost on 9/11 with more simple kindness, community, and finding common ground.
There's no being together. No, we're America. It's just there's two Americas, what some people say.
We can make this place better. We can strive for the future. We just, together, unity, community.
And inside that word community, unity, and the hope of a nation.
In the blink of an eye, our world can change. In the moments we share together, we find the strength to carry on. Unity will show you that where hands We'll see you tomorrow.
And now a personal note from us. For 2 decades, we've been on this journey with all of them. The babies, their mothers, in wonder at their grace and moments of joy, and honored by their trust. So as we all mark this day tomorrow, our hearts are with them and all the thousands of other families struck by loss, with gratitude for the ways they renew our hope.
Yes, hope. And through their pain and their courage right here tonight, they've given the rest of us a gift, reminding us 20 years later the power of humanity, the power of coming together. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. as this nation remembers. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Diane Sawyer. And for all of us at ABC News in 2020, good night.